Today is January 25th of 2023, and I'm interviewing Robert Curl. My name is Michelle Little.
I was born June the 28th, 1925. And I'll have to tell you something funny about that. When I got to be 9 years old, it was during the Depression. And I went up and to a theater. I like to go to movies. I like to see them. And I asked this man for a job. And he laughed and he said, "The Depression's going on. There's no jobs here." He said, "What can you do?" I said, "Well, I could go home and get me an old broom handle and drive a nail in it and sharpen it and pick up paper here." He said, "You can?" I said, "Yes, sir." He said, "What kind of pay do you want?" I said, "See all the movies free." He said, "Son, you got a job." And all the boys were jealous of me. It cost a dime then to go to a movie, but I just walked right on in. My dad was a Methodist preacher, the best man I've ever known in my life. He was a good man. And you know, we moved around a whole lot. In the Methodist church, they moved about every 2 or 3 years. They don't want the congregation to get to honoring the preacher instead of the Lord. So they had a system where they moved them every 2 or 3 years. I really didn't like it because in school I'd have to leave all my friends and everything. But I'd go to a new school and make new friends. But it was a wonderful life though. We never did have very much money, but my dad, like I say, was a good man. And I had a wonderful mother, and she died in 1930 when I was 5 years old. And I really missed her.
What was her name? What were your parents' names?
Her name was Ella Vaughn Curl.
And what about your dad? What was his name?
You'll never guess. The man that started the Methodist Church was named John Wesley. My daddy was named John Wesley Curl. He was born on Christmas Day in 1879. He was a good man. And where we went, everybody loved him.
And you said you got into photography young, as a
11
child.
years
So
old.
did you do some photography during high school as well?
Sure did. Everywhere I went, I was photographer for it. I was a photographer in high school, in college, in the Navy, and I worked later in life for Bruno's Incorporated. I was photographer, I was safety director, but I was photographer. We published a magazine every month, and I took pictures for all that.
So what got you interested in it as a child? What do you think drew you to photography?
I had, usually at that time, most of the teachers were ladies, but I had one man teacher. And he got talking about, he had a camera that cost $10. I thought, whoa, I wish I had a camera like that, but I didn't have $10. But he told me all about photography, and that's when I got interested and sent off for catalogs. Yes, I had 2 brothers and 1 sister, and they were older than me. I'll have to tell you something funny about that. When I was a little child, I had a goat and had a wagon, and that goat pulled me everywhere. And I had a dog too, and we rode in T-models. And at that time they had a running board on each side. My goat ran on one running board, and my dog on the other one. And one time we went to hunt scaly bark hickory nuts, and it was high up on a hill, and it had big rocks. As soon as we got there, that goat ran up there and got on top of a rock and went bah! And he looked down there and saw the dog couldn't figure out how to get there. He went down there and butted and showed the dog way up to the top of the hill. Oh, I have to tell you something funny about that T-model. You couldn't go very far in that thing, but I remember one time, and I took a picture of it, the radiator overheated, and my dad stopped by a branch and took his hat off and filled it full of water and poured it in the radiator so we could go. I'll tell you something about funny. At that time, there weren't paved roads everywhere. Most of them were paved in Alabama, and we'd be driving along, and all of a sudden we'd hit a dirt road. Everybody said, "We must be in Mississippi now."
Well, what were your brothers and sisters' names? What were your siblings' names?
My youngest brother was named Marvin, and my oldest brother was named Clarence, and Stella was my sister's name. Oh, I'll have to tell you about that lady. That's the most wonderful lady in this world. Oh, since I said moved to different places, well, they moved us to another church, and we moved on Thursday. Well, I hadn't met anybody in the community. I met some boys. Well, I went to church that Sunday morning, and the most beautiful girl was up at the pulpit giving the devotion. I nudged the boy. I said, "I don't know who that girl is, but I'm going to marry that girl." And I didn't know that she was looking at me too. They had a thing at that church called Fireside. After church, all the young people went to a home somewhere and played games and ate refreshments. They had canceled it for that Sunday. I didn't know, but she, after church, went home and called the person in charge of Fireside, said, "If you will have it at your house tonight, I'll furnish refreshments." That's when we met, February the 14th, 1943. And I've loved her every day since. She was a wonderful lady, just perfect.
And tell us her name.
Nell Curl. She used, her last name was Spring, and she used Nell Spring Curl. The only girl I ever dated. I wasn't dating any girls then. Let's see, at that time, I was 17 and she was 15. She was 2 years younger than me. And I asked her for a date, and sure enough got one. And at that time, I didn't have any money hardly, but I had one Argus C3 camera. And I sold that camera to get money to carry her on a date. And we used to ride the streetcar and go to town to see the movies. But one night when I came, I dated her for about 3 months before I joined the Navy. I said, "I'm joining the Navy tomorrow." I finished high school on Friday night and joined the Navy on Saturday morning. I thought she'd give me a kiss, but she didn't. Surprised the heck out of me. But I think I told her about that female. She saved every letter I wrote, and I got them in a big tin box up there in my room now. And I didn't know, I went through them not long ago, and I happened to pick one up, and it said Bob's first letter when he joined the Navy. She saved every one of them. Most of the boys were dating. None of us had any money, didn't have a car or anything. We had to ride a streetcar anywhere we went. But I was not dating anybody at all. I was real bashful and everything. And in fact, I was scared to date. In fact, one night we were playing Fairfield High School. And as soon as we finished the game, going back to shower to clean up, one boy told me, he said, "There's a girl waiting for you out there." You know, I was so scared I went out another door. I did the wrong thing. She was a real nice girl. I should have gone out, but I was scared to. I knew I didn't have any money, couldn't treat her to anything.
So you decided to enlist the day after you graduated.
Yes, sure did.
How did you decide that?
I'll have to tell you something funny about that. In high school, we got talking about service and everything. We were going to join, and this friend of mine said he was going to join the Army. I said, "Not me." I said, "I'm going to join the Navy." He said, "Well, not me." He said, "I don't want a shark eating me." I said, "Well, I don't want anybody sticking a bayonet in my stomach." I really loved the Navy, and I really intended to make it a career, but I tell you, they sent me everywhere. And I was never still at all, and I'd see other fellas that stayed permanent at a place. I'd like to have done that. I thought, well, I want to raise a family, and so I didn't join the Navy. I got out as soon as the war was over. He said, "Son," he hated to see me go. He said, "I'm proud of you, and I wish I could go with you." Like I say, my dad was born in 1879. He was about 50-something years old when I joined the Navy. It all happened so fast. The recruiting office was in the post office in Birmingham. And there was a big train station about a mile away called Terminal Station. It was a beautiful place. And they marched us. Oh, they sent me home, said, "Go home and get a toothbrush and everything and come back." Well, I came back and they marched us. They sent us off to the Navy right there. We got on a train and went to Bainbridge, Maryland. A brand new, they just opened that brand new place. I'll have to tell you something funny about that. I'd never been on a train before. And usually people at that time, when they get on the train, they fried chicken and carried it with them, because nobody had any money. But that day they carried us to the diner. And I was sitting there, and this waiter came up. He said, "What do you have for an appetizer?" I looked at him, I said, "I'm already hungry." I didn't know they had such a thing as appetizer. Everything was a new experience to me about joining the Navy and going to New York and everything. It was I'll have to tell you, I was with a bunch of people from up north. And one day they were talking, I thought they were making fun of my father. I was taught to respect you, Father. They called him the old man, even though he was old at that time. I said, "Don't you talk about my daddy." I was about ready to fight somebody. I didn't know that that's what they called their father up north, the old man. He was the old man of the family, and they called him that instead of father, they called him the old man. I learned a lot joining the Navy.
Were there any other guys from Alabama or from the South with you, or
No.
was it all, yeah?
I was the only one.
Okay. So what was boot camp like? I mean, being away from home for the first time like that, what was the training and all that like for you?
Well, I'll have to tell you something else funny about that. At home, I was raised on vegetables. We had fried chicken on Sunday. That was a deluxe meal. But when I got in the Navy, they had all kinds of food. And I was about to eat myself to death. So I got in the chow line after I finished and came back, and this chief looked at me and he said, "Hadn't you been in this line before?" I said, "Yes, sir." I said, "That big sign up there says, 'Take all you want, but eat all you take.'" I said, "You watch me, I'm eating it all." He said, "Go ahead." And I gained weight. Like I said, when I played football, I weighed 160. Well, it wasn't long, I weighed 180 in the Navy. One morning at muster, they said, everybody, the men that made high on general intelligence, step forward. He said, "Let's step forward." I said, "No, they told me never to volunteer for anything." He said, "Well, this outfit we're in is no fun." I said, "Well, you're right then." So we stepped out and they said, "You two are going to secret radar school in Woods Hole, Massachusetts." I asked the fellow, I said, "What's radar?" I'd never heard of it before. So we went out there and went to school, and I thought, man, I'm getting out of Scouts and Raiders. Well, they sent me back, right back in the same outfit, and I was operated the radar that allowed me to find Omaha Beach on D-Day.
Yes.
That radar, I have to tell you something funny. It was a virtual image plan position indicator reflector scope. I still remember that.
So tell me a little more
Oh,
about
I have to tell you something funny about that. Well, like I say, they sent me to the Royal Naval Academy to learn about the beach in Normandy. And I saw pictures of fortifications, of pillboxes the German had, and they told me, said, there was 12 of us on that boat, and we were all specialists. And they told us that in all probability, we went in before the first wave. And they said, in all probability, you're going to be killed. So I saw all the fortifications, I thought, well, they're right. So I wrote a letter to that mother of mine. I told her, I wish I had been a better son. I thought that was the end of me, but here I am.
You got to see her again. So tell me a little bit more about, when they you first started to learn what, you said you didn't even know what radar was.
No.
And you got selected for that school, for Massachusetts. Just walk me through what that process was like, where you went next, and what you started to learn.
Well, they developed this new radar, MIT, a college over across, and the professors would come over. We were on an island, Woods Hole, Massachusetts, and they would come over there to teach us about this radar. It was real fast. They were in a hurry, and like I say, they sent me back to this Little Creek, Virginia. That's where they trained the Scouts and Raiders. And I'll have to tell you something funny about that. They put me on KP and had a big tub there and had me snapping the heads off of shrimp. I'd never seen them before. I said, I said, "Do people eat these things?"
Did you like shrimp? Did you try some?
I never did like them. maybe that's sitting there snapping the heads off of. But I eat them here because I know I ought to, but I really don't love them. I love seafood, fish seafood, but I don't like shrimp.
So how many guys are you there with? Just give me a sense of what, how big was your class?
I think there were 8 of us in all. And all of us on that boat they built specially, we were scouts and raiders. I have to tell you something funny about that. That little old boat was loaded down with electronic equipment. We had more than most ships have because we were going to find the landing place and everything. But there were only 2 bunks on that thing. We had 2 commissioned officers and 12 petty officers. The officers got the bunks. We slept on stretchers. They kept them folded up, and we unfolded them and slept on stretchers all the time. Just like we were wounded or something.
Yeah.
But they could, didn't take much room on that boat. It was 56 feet long. Since the sea was rough, they were having trouble trying to get provisions ashore. So they wanted a breakwater, and they had some old Liberty ships that were no good. And they wanted me to find a place to sink them. So I did, and they blew the bottom out and had them all close together, and it made a good breakwater. But they had bunks. The water didn't come all the way to the top. We slept, since I was sleeping on stretchers, at night we would tie up to those sunken Liberty ships and sleep in the bunks up there. And they would come over, the Germans come over bombing that night, and those ships are sitting on the sand, they'd rot, kind of like that when they dropped the bombs. And we had sunk a battleship, an old battleship that was no good too. And the skipper one night asked me, he said, "Where were you last night?" I said, "I was on that battleship." He said, "What?" I said, "That thing has got steel this thick on there." He said, "I'll be there tonight with you."
Found you a better place to sleep.
Yeah. But I stayed there for 3 weeks, and like I say, they put me into Scouts and Raiders and issued me all kinds of Army stuff. Well, first of all, when we got to England, they assigned us in a Quonset hut. And I put my sea bag down and everything, and they announced chow call. And there's a fellow that had lived there before in that thing, and he had his mess kit. He looked at me and he said, "Where are you going?" I said, "I'm going to chow." He said, "You got to have a mess kit if you're going to eat chow here." I said, "I'm in the Navy." He said, "I am too," but said, "We got to have a mess kit." So he showed me how to hold that thing. It unfolds, and if you don't hold it right, you'll spill everything. But he showed me how to hold it. Oh, and they sent, after 3 weeks, we did all we could do there. And they sent us back to England. And then they were going to send us to southern France. And they sent us in that little boat. We traveled all up from England, past Portugal and Spain and Gibraltar and everything into the Mediterranean. And let's see, they sent us to Salerno, and we helped with the invasion there. But most of the time was spent at Naples. And then after that, they sent us north to Corsica and Sardinia, little islands up there. And we went there, and since we were going to have we were close to southern France. Well, all the other ships, when they got ready for the invasion, they came in and followed us in there, and they put something new on our boat for that invasion. They put a smoke generator. And so we went in front of all the waves and laid smoke so the Germans couldn't see them coming in. And I led the first wave in there just like I did in Normandy.
Wow.
But I wish we'd invaded there first. The water was just as calm as could be, and there weren't pill boxes there, like there were in Normandy. And there not many Germans there, and so the army advanced pretty fast there. And we stayed there for about 3 weeks, and the officers left our boat and would go ashore. And I asked the officer, I said, can we go ashore too? He said, no, you can't. And I said, we were staying there on the boat, and he was going ashore and seeing everything. And I told this friend of mine, I said, let's go ashore. And the boat came by, and we got on that boat and went ashore. You know, we hitchhiked all the way to a city that they had taken over. We were trying to get Leon's. We called it Lines. But hitchhiking, there were a bunch of army trucks coming by, and we were hitchhiking and didn't have uniform on, just had work uniform. Didn't have a billfold, I just had my dog tag. And they picked us up in this army truck. We went into a little old town, and the people in the little old town said, "Vive la France! Vive la France!" As we went through, and we got through the town, and it was a wide, 2 roads out there. They didn't know which way to go. So they took the one on the left. We circled around and came through the same town again. As the people hollered, "Vive la France!" But we had a good time.
What else do you remember seeing while you were in France?
Oh, I have to tell you something funny about that. I'd been instructed about booby traps. And I found a dead soldier one day, and he had a book on him that showed what things he was qualified for. Machine gun and hand grenades and everything. And I took it off of him and brought it home and gave it to my son. But let's see, what was I going to say? My mind goes blank.
Well, you remember a lot. You mentioned you were trained on booby traps, but were you?
Oh, yeah. What I used to do is carry a ball of thread with me, and I thought if I was wanting to find a camera, a Rolleiflex. That's what I was looking for, a German Rolleiflex. Well, I never did find one. But one day I found some binoculars, and I didn't have my coil string with me. I looked and got me a stick about this far, and I poked it. Nothing happened. If it had, it'd have blown me up. I was that close to it. But I got those binoculars. I went to this camera store, and I told the man I wanted to buy a new camera. He said, "We just have one up there." And he said, "But you can't buy it." He said, "You got to have A1 priority for it." He said, "Generals and admirals can buy it, but you can't as a sailor." And he said, "We have a lot of used cameras here." I said, "No," I said, "I've saved my money while I was overseas, and I want to buy a new camera." He said, "Well, you can't buy that one." I said, "You said something about a priority." And he said, "Yeah." I said, "Where do you get that priority?" He said, "At the Empire State Building." So my friend and I walked up there, and nosy, we walked in, and they treated servicemen like kings then. And this head man was in his office standing next to his secretary. When we walked in, he said, "You fellas come on in." He said, "Where have you been?" I said, "We led the first wave in on D-Day." He said, "You did?" He said, "Come in and tell me about it." So he carried us in his office, and we talked about it a while. After a while, we got through, and he said, "Were you ever in Plymouth, England?" I said, "Yes, sir, that was our home port." He said, "My daughter was in the Red Cross in Plymouth, England." and he started reaching for his billfold to get a picture, and as soon as he did, I said, that's her. I said, Mo, look here. I said, that's the girl that gave us donuts every Wednesday. When I just said that, he was glad somebody had seen his daughter. He said, what kind of priority did you want? And he gave me priority, and I went back and bought that camera. And that camera now is on display at the World War II Museum in New Orleans. I donated it to them. They sent me to another radar school in Charleston, I think it's in Virginia, I believe. Well, they were building a brand new rocket ship there. They were designing it with gyro control rockets. As the ship moved, the rocket stayed set. And they had never used that ship. It was a LSMR rocket ship. And they put me on that doggone thing and sent me through the Panama Canal out into the Pacific. We were going to invade Japan, and I was out there, let's see, close to Eniwetok, and we were getting ready to invade Japan when they dropped the bomb. I said, whoo, thank goodness. I said, I'll never make it through another invasion. Oh, I have to tell you something funny about that. Like I said, everything has been funny that happened. I went ashore there in one of the islands, and a Japanese girl was cutting my hair. And she was giving me a deluxe haircut. And I was back going back to sleep while she was cutting. All of a sudden I woke up and there's fire going all around my head. I thought, she's trying to set me on fire. I'd never heard of a singe haircut. That's a deluxe haircut. And she was singeing the ends of my hair.
Oh.
But I thought she was trying to kill me.
So you did spend some time in Japan. You did go on to Japan.
No, I didn't.
You didn't, okay.
They told us to turn around and go back to Honolulu.
Okay.
So we went there and stayed a little while, and then they were going to decommission that ship. And they were going to send us to Bremerton, Washington. And they came an order one day and told us to dump all the ammunition we had overboard. Well, that's an all-hands job, no matter what rating you. I was second-class petty officer. I was leading petty officer then. And I thought, dadgum, I don't want to get into that. I was goof off most of the time in the Navy. And I went to the skipper and I told him, like I said a while ago, I said, Skipper, the virtual image plan position indicator reflector scope is broke. He said, you fix it. I said, yes, sir. I went in there and sat by that radar while everybody was dumping ammunition overboard. We were just carrying high-ranked people around in that boat. And one day, Ernie Pyle, the most famous war correspondent there was, he was on our boat, and he didn't go ashore on the first day. But on the second day, he went ashore, and he saw like all those bodies there, and he wrote about it. And he sent the report in. They censored it, wouldn't let it go in, because they didn't want the people back in the United States to know how bad it was there. So that day when he typed his letter, at that time, to make a copy, you had a carbon copy and onion skin paper. And when he typed that, and he pulled, and he had that onion skin paper in his typewriter, and he said, they censored my report. He said, it'll never be seen by anybody. And he started to get that onion skin paper, that copy. I said, what are you going to do with that? He said, throw it away. I said, can I have it? He said, yeah. So he gave it to me, and I brought it home, and I was going to college then, and I hadn't been to school in a long time, and I was making D's and S writing essays. I just couldn't make a good grade to save my neck. But one day the professor assigned us a journalistic thing. I thought, boy, I got 'em made now. I copied what Ernie Pyle wrote in that thing, everything word for word. And down at the end he said, in retrospect. I thought, what is retrospect? I looked it up in the dictionary in case that professor asked me, and I turned it in. I was making D's. Guess what grade Ernie Pyle made? C+. And I couldn't tell them what I'd done. They'd kick me out of school. Yeah, I copied his article word for word. Ernie Pyle, you know, most of the correspondents would stay with the officers. Ernie Pyle didn't. He stayed with the soldiers. And he loved the soldiers and sailors and everything. He was really a good man. And after the war, after that, they sent him to the Pacific, and he got killed out there in the Pacific. We were up there, we had, after we were supposed to sit there and lead all the waves in. We timed when they went in and everything, and we were sitting there waiting for the second wave. The ships were 6 miles out at sea. The destroyers and ships that carried all the soldiers. And as they came in, then we would lead them in. They were shooting at us from the pillboxes, German 88s, and we kept dodging around, trying to move around, stay pretty close to the same place. And I got surprised sometimes when we moved exactly where we was hitting, a shell would hit there. I said, whoo, we sure were lucky that time. And I looked back behind us, and I saw 2 ships that were flying the flag upside down. I told the skipper, I said, look there, they don't know how to fly the flag. They got it upside down. He said, yeah, they're in distress. They're sinking. Said, when you're in distress, you take the American flag and fly it upside down. I learned a lesson that day. I didn't know that. But early that morning, as destroyers, they were staying about 3 miles back. As one came in, they saw these pillboxes, battleships would hit. The concrete was 6 foot thick, reinforced concrete. It was strong. And when the battleships would hit, just a chip of that concrete would chip off. And they had an opening there where they had the guns. The only way you could get to them is through that opening. Well, a destroyer that morning back in, they had 5-inch destroyer turrets on the front and the back. I said, look there. I said, he's as close as we are. I said, he's going to run aground. He backed in and hit that inside that German 88 and knocked the one out that was giving us trouble. I said, whoo, thank goodness. But I thought sure he was going to run aground. Oh, since I said that, these big LSTs, they carried a lot of soldiers and a lot of tanks and everything. They came in, had to come in at high tide, and then they would open the door. Well, if they didn't get unloaded before the tide went out, they got stuck there on the sand. You'll never guess how many ships, how many sea-carrying stuff there was that morning.
How many?
6,000. I didn't know. Oh, and I think I showed you a picture of barrage balloons. In England, they had barrage balloons they had lit up at night with a steel cable. When the Germans would come, if they dove down close, it would cut the wings off. But every ship that was in the invasion that day had a barrage balloon tied to the front of them. But that afternoon, 2 German planes came in strafing, and I said, look there. And I said, they gonna hit? They did not hit a single one of those. And they didn't come back. They straight that one time, and that's all they did. But later on, the Germans developed a V-2 rocket that went thousands of miles an hour. And the United States bombed where they were building them. Thank goodness. If they'd have been able to build all of those, they'd have won the war, because we didn't have any defense again. Nothing to do for them, because they could come over and bomb England. I wish they knew how horrible war is. Really, I'm against war. The only war that I'm in favor of, if somebody attacks us, I say, go at them with everything we got. But I tell you right now, it hurts me to see these young men that have been over there and legs blown off. That just tears me up. War's just too horrible. I hope we never have one again.